As all people who have played Cuphead know, it's a game comprised of a unique art style and an amazing soundtrack. The soundtrack is a ragtime classical style composed by Christopher Madigan and performed by a 13-piece band including a solo pianist, a violinist, and many others. In this video, I'll be looking at the importance of sound in music in video games. In order to do so, I'll be looking at three aspects in which sounds play a major role in video games. Firstly, the asymmetric function, or sounds which the source of the sound cannot be seen. These are also called extra-diegenic sounds. Secondly, Stockburger sound objects, are sounds that are related to an event in the game. And finally, diegenic sounds, or sounds that come from an in-game source. With that being said, let's jump into this amazing game. In order to prove the effect of sound on gameplay, I will be playing the game with sounds on, and then again with sounds off. Although I will preface this by saying, playing this game without the sounds, you lose such an amazing feature. The hard work of Christopher Maddington and the musicians also goes completely unnoticed. To start, let's look at the acousometric function. In order to do this, I'm going to be looking at the Railroad Wraith boss fight, specifically the sounds produced by the boss in order to indicate an oncoming attack. As you can see from the clips I'm showing now, this was a rather spooky boss fight. Holy, and that's not even half the deaths. Let me tell you what, I'd rather play Battletoads with no saves than do this again. Let's focus in on the final phase of this boss battle, the one where you battle the train engine. The engine has a specific move where it sends a puff of smoke into the air. The smoke then circles around before swinging back towards the character. The smoke attack is very hard to see when it happens. However, there is a very specific sound that plays when the boss performs this attack. This sound allows the player to anticipate the incoming attack. The sound you just heard, almost like a horn, is the sound the smoke attack makes. I'll play it again one more time. Without this warning sound, the attack becomes a lot harder to dodge, because not only is it very hard to see, but now there's also no audio cue warning the player that the attack is imminent. Now, this isn't a perfect example of an extra diegetic sound, because you can, if you're paying attention, see the source of the sound, but it is very similar. And it's also important to note that without this sound, it becomes harder to dodge the attack. One of the test subjects in Kristen Jorgensen's Left in the Dark, playing computer games with the sound turned off, had a very similar experience to my own. When he was playing Warcraft 3, he claimed he couldn't play as well because the sound that normally prompts the player of a completed task was turned off, so he had no idea when the task was completed and couldn't act in a quick enough manner. The next type of sounds are Stockburger sounds, which are sounds that relate to an in-game event. For example, when Cuphead gets hit or damaged, there's a sound that's played that's almost like a clattering of china. This sound indicates that you've been hit and you have invincibility frames, so you have to get out of harm's way as quickly as possible or you'll get hit again. When I played the game without sound, I actually noticed that sometimes I would be getting hit twice in a row, because it can oftentimes be hard to notice when you've been hit. The visual indication is that your character flashes in-game, and unless you're paying close attention to your character, you don't always see that. You can see in this scene, I'm fighting a different boss, one I've never actually fought before, and I did it for the first time with the sounds off. And you can see that when this boss launches his tomato attack, it actually leaves little projectiles that shoot along the floor and can damage the character. At first, I didn't see this, and I didn't notice that I had been hit by it, because that invincibility frame you've been hit sound did not play, and so at first I didn't realize, and it took me 2 or maybe even 3 tomato shots before I recognized it. Once again, a test subject in Left in the Dark had a similar experience to what I had. When he was playing Warcraft 3, he said he often clicked on something he couldn't afford because the sound that says you do not have enough gold didn't play, and so he would continue to click and click and click before realizing and stopping. The third and final type of sounds I want to talk about are diegenic sounds, or sounds that have a visual catalyst to them. So these sounds help a player to feel immersed into the game, as the player can relate the sounds to the visual action which caused them. making the world feel a little more realistic. For example, in this scene here, I kill the first boss face and he lets out this scream. This allows you to really feel like you've killed the boss. He's screaming. This enables you to feel immersed in the world, as the sound is being paired with something that's happening. Another example like this is when the skeleton phase of the boss slaps his hands down. It creates a slapping noise when he hits the ground. So now that I've gone over the 3 types of sounds important to gameplay, I would like to look more at the effect of playing games with the sounds turned off. After my initial knockout of the Railroad Wraith boss, I went back and played it again, except this time with no sounds. I'll be playing my full run in the background as I continue talking. I expected this boss to be much harder without the sounds, but what I actually found was the opposite. I killed the boss on my first try. I do understand that this is likely just because I've had experience with this boss, and I had just beaten it. However, I still expected some degree of difficulty when fighting this boss, because I didn't have those prompts, and I expected I'd get hit a few more times or something along those lines, but I didn't find that. Perhaps another contributing factor to my success against this boss was the fact that the music wasn't distracting me. Without it there, I found that I was almost able to concentrate more on what was actually happening in the game, and I wasn't moving my head to the music or something along those lines. And this is actually very similar to what a test subject in Left in the Dark found. He said that sometimes the music could take away his concentration, and without the music there, he was actually able to concentrate better on the game, and his gameplay improved. I was really interested in this effect, or the idea that perhaps music affects your concentration and can negatively impact your gameplay. So I decided I'd run a little test, which is hopefully more fair than the Wraith fight, where I played a new level that I've never played before, and I decided to switch the sounds on and off, and then compare how I performed with the sounds on versus how I performed with the sounds off. The level I decided to play in order to run my little test was Peerless Piers. It's a sea-based run and gun, a level I've never played before or even seen. So, as I mentioned earlier, I was turning the sounds on and off, and then I was comparing my performance with the sounds on compared to the sounds off. What I found was quite interesting. It was very hard to figure out whether I performed better with the sounds on or off, but I actually enjoyed the level more with the sounds off. I believe there's a few reasons I preferred it with the sound off. The first one being that I played this level at least 50 times. I would die and then restart and die and restart. So this sound just kept getting more and more frustrating the more I heard it. And I've been playing the music in the background as I've been speaking. So if you've been paying attention, you can kind of tell that the song is very repetitive. It has the same kind of beat, same kind of sound. And hearing that again and again can really become annoying. And so I think this is a big reason why I preferred it with the sounds off. Kristen Jorgensen actually brought up a very similar point to this in Left in the Dark. He wrote that it's very important for game producers to implement their audio in an innovative way for it to not become annoying. One of the examples he used was in Grand Theft Auto. You can actually bring your own music in from outside of the game, and then you can listen to it when you're driving around in your car in-game. He says that this way, the players don't get annoyed by the music, and they don't turn it off. The second reason is similar to the first, in that I did die a ton of times, and I've heard these similar sounds. This time, instead of the level music, it was the clattering of china or the death screen sound. And hearing that over and over and over again kind of reminded me of my failure at this level, and it made me angry, it made me rage, and I find I was quitting the game a lot more with the sounds on than with the sounds off. Left in the Dark is really an interesting article, and applying it to Cuphead really gave me some insight into the importance of music in video games. Even though I perhaps performed better with the music off, I would still always recommend leaving it on. This game has such an amazing soundtrack, and by turning it off, you lose such an integral piece of the game itself. And if I had more time, I'd really like to look at turning the music down, but leaving the sound effects on, and see how that affects gameplay. Perhaps if I have to take this course again, I will. All my references are in the description below. Thank you very much for watching.